I want to start off by asking you, like, have you ever noticed how much we are taught about modesty, especially if you grew up in the church, what not to wear, how not to draw attention to yourself, how to make sure that nobody gets the wrong idea about you. And so we're taught to be careful with our beauty, kind of like we should be suspicious of it, like there's something wrong about it, and maybe that we should be afraid of it. And we're not always taught that God, what he says about it, though, or even how to steward the beauty that he's given us. And I think that's one reason why so many Christian women today have such a complicated relationship with beauty or with themselves in the mirror. We want to look nice, of course we do, but we often find ourselves even judging other women for the beauty that they carry, and we'll call it vain, right? I know I have been there, but we also want to feel confident, but worry if that confidence will be misconstrued and misunderstood as something like pride. And then without realizing it, we've really contorted ourselves and made little agreements with insecurity without knowing that we've done that. So we'll say things like, "Oh, I'm not photogenic, so I'll just take the picture." What? Or how about, I don't need anything new. I'm too old for that. This trend that's going on, too old for that. Or I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'll just throw my hair up. Not a big deal. Well, most of those things do sound harmless. And some of them may even sound humble, truly. But if we're honest, a lot of the time, those are not coming from God, his voice, things that might give us peace or confidence that we can walk into. And so they're coming from a woman who has learned to make herself less visible, right? Before anyone else gets the chance to notice her. And then Jesus, he tells us things like love your neighbor as yourself. And I don't know about you, but I hear that and I think, oops, we have a problem. And so if I talk to my neighbor the way I talk to myself in the mirror sometimes, I would need to repent by lunchtime. So today we're going to be talking about a question that I think a lot of women, we do quietly ask ourselves, like, what does God actually say about beauty? And my hope by the end of this conversation is that you begin to see beauty less like something you have to defend or protect or, feel suspicious about, and more like something that God designed for you to steward, right? Because beauty itself is not vanity. Idolatry is vanity. And so chasing approval through comparison and performing for beauty, that's exhausting and will wear a woman out. Beauty, though, the kind that comes from God, like, it was never meant to trap you. It was meant to reveal something about who God is in your life and shine him in this world like a highlighter. It's supposed to draw people to those words on the sheet like a highlighter does, right? And so the mirror, it does not need to be a place where when you show up in front of it for you to gather evidence against yourself. Like, it needs to become a place where you start going on a treasure hunt to see what God has put in you and why. Like, what does he want to say about that thing about you? Right. And I think one of the reasons this matters so much is because most of us actually know how to find beauty. We really are good at it. We do it all of the time. It's just a lot easier when we're seeing it in someone else than we do in ourselves. And so one of my favorite things to do is to celebrate people. I love noticing things that make them light up, the highlighter part of them, right? And if I feel a little nudge from the Lord, I'll even step out and say something to them. And it happens all the time at these art shows that I'm sitting at every weekend. A woman will walk by, something highlights her to me, and I'll say something like, boy, that color is stunning on you. Or she's got some fun earrings. Those are so fun. Like, they fit your personality perfectly. And when I see her smile and it lights up her face, I think, man, that right there, that is it. That's the thing that God put inside of her. And I am so grateful that I got to see it. Right. And so what's interesting is, I don't know if these women are Christians or not. I don't know their background. I don't know their story. But what I do know and what I have noticed is, Christian or not, we all behave the same way. We all will respond to beauty comments like that very similarly. So, for a split second, you see her light up. And then almost immediately she tries to talk herself out of receiving that compliment, right? And I get it, because I've done it too, for sure. And it what's interesting though, a kind word can be handed out like a gift, right? And so before it has a time to land, we start finding a reason to reject it. I'm not worthy of what you just said. And so women, we don't even know that we're doing it. We think we're being polite or humble just to make things not feel awkward. But sometimes it's like that discomfort is us being afraid of being seen or noticed, or for us to shine and be highlighted. And sadly, we're trying to not be awkward, but it's awkward for everyone because the person who handed you a gift, you're shoving the gift back in their face, right? And so this is where Jesus's words begin to feel a little more personal, because when he says, love your neighbor as yourself, we're often so good at loving our neighbor's beauty. We can see the sparkle in her creativity, right? We can see the joy in her laughter, and how a certain color will bring life to her. And we'll call it out in her when we see it. But when someone tries to call that beauty out in us, we'll argue with them, right? Like they presented a lie or bad evidence, or whatever they're saying is not true. And I wonder if part of learning to love our neighbor as ourselves is learning to stop despising the same kind of beauty that we see in other people when it's about us. Because for sure, this is something I used to not like about myself. I had been told that my smile was too big, and I believed it. And so I would never look at another woman and go, your smile is too big. Like, so why do I say that to myself? Right? I mean, as I'm saying this, I hope you can hear how ludicrous this all sounds. And that is why we have to go back to what God says, because culture and the beauty industry will define beauty for us if we let them. And insecurity, it will define it through every flaw that we can find in ourselves. But scripture, it actually starts somewhere completely different. The foundation it comes from, it is a completely different foundation. And so today I want to give us a simple framework for beauty. Okay. And once you understand it, beauty starts moving out of the category of vanity and into a category of worship for a creator and stewardship. And so just a reminder though, that if you want this week's notes, I do have them in a worksheet inside the Making Life Beautiful Again Facebook group. Feel free to go and grab that, and we'd love for you to join us. So the first part of the framework is beauty was created. This is where I think we have to start, right? Because if we start with culture and the beauty industry, we'll end up all kinds of confused. And so, culture, it's going to tell you it's all about competition. The beauty industries are going to tell you it's all about this problem to fix. And so you need to buy this product. And in your own insecurities, will have you comparing until you no longer can feel confident about anything. But scripture, it starts with the Lord being our creator, right? In Genesis, it tells us that God created the heavens and the earth. He created the light, the land, the water, the plants, the animals, and then people. And so again and again, God looked at what he created and he called it good. And I want that to land for a second, because that means you're not an accident or a mistake. Nothing about you is. So if you have crooked teeth, that is not a mistake. He's calling it good, right? So Psalm 139, when it says God knit you together in your mother's womb, that means before you ever looked in the mirror or anybody else told you what they thought about your appearance, before wrinkles started showing up, he's not saying you're pretty good enough. You're good enough. No, he's saying, I personally crafted and designed you like an artist. My husband, he's an artist. Every single piece is uniquely designed. And he admires his work. That's what God's doing. He looks at you. He delights in you. He thinks you're beautiful. He admires your work. He calls you a masterpiece. So beauty is factory installed by the creator. And I know that can feel hard to receive because some of us learn to think of beauty only as what happens when we improve ourselves, or when we cover up our wrinkles or our flaws, or we take hair dye and cover up the grays, right? We lose the weight, whatever it is that we think we have to do before we can call ourselves beautiful. Biblically, beauty does not begin with improvement. It begins with the creation, your creator. Okay. And that doesn't mean that our bodies, that this will all be easy. or that we'll never struggle, right? It simply means we have to stop treating God's design like it's a mistake, something that we have to apologize for, correct when someone gives us a nice word, because God knit you together. And then he looked at you and he said, you're good. So that's worth honoring, caring for, and noticing, right? Which brings us to the second part of the framework. Beauty can get twisted. And this is where I don't have to give a lot of explanation, but we do get stuck as women because we can look at beauty in an unhealthy way. We've all experienced comparison and obsession, right? We know what it's like to chase for approval. And so we've seen culture turn beauty into a measuring stick. So when we do end up looking at ourselves in the mirror, we often come from a place of shame. And instead of asking God how to redeem the beauty, many of us just put beauty into like this dangerous category, something to be suspicious. Like it's going to make someone stumble, or it's going to, I don't know what, everybody has their own story. But if beauty can become vain, this is how we think. Maybe I should not care about it at all. So as women, we tend to go all or nothing in this place because we'll run for that comparison and to look good and compete, or we will do nothing at all. At least that's my experience as a coach with women. But that's not how we treat other good things that God made. And I want you to hear this, because food can become gluttony, right? But we don't look at food and call it sinful. Okay. And then money, it can become greed, but we don't necessarily say that provision is sinful. Leadership can become control, but we do not say that influence is sinful, right? Rest can be laziness, but we don't say that sleep is sinful. So why do we ask ourselves and act like beauty in and of itself is the problem? Because, and I know that we don't necessarily tell ourselves consciously that it's the problem, but when I sit and listen to clients, that's what we think. We think beauty is the problem. And so I want to be clear, beauty is not vanity. Idolatry is vanity, right? Comparison is vanity. Needing applause can be vanity, right? Letting a mirror become your master is vanity, but receiving what God created and gifted us, caring for it, letting it reflect him, is actually stewardship and worship before our creator. So Romans 5:8, it says that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And I know you might be thinking, well, what does that have to do with beauty? When you hear that while we were sinners, Christ died for us, that means God is not confused about your ability to twist up good things. Okay. Because we just walked through beauty can be twisted. He knows us. He knows our human heart, right? He knows we can take something beautiful and turn it into striving, comparison, hiding, pride, whatever, right? He still chooses to love. He still chooses us. And so the answer is not to reject beauty because we have misused it. That's all. So the answer is to bring beauty back under his lordship, to let him purify it, him redeem it, him sanctify it, to let him heal our relationship with it. Right? So next time we get in front of the mirror, I want you to ask the Lord, like, how do I receive this without worshiping it? Like, how do I care for this without obsessing over it? Like, how do I shine without performing or feeling shame when I don't perform? Because we have both days where we're performing and days where we're not. And so that brings us to the third part of this framework, and that is beauty was meant to shine. And this is a good portion of my book that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Really excited about it. But Ephesians 5:8, it says, for you were once darkness, but now you are the light. You are light in the world. Live as children of light. He is the father of lights. And so we are his children. We are like him. And so I love the phrase, children of light. That means light is not something we're supposed to hide from. We're not that song, hide it under a bushel. No, we are not meant to hide it. It is something we are supposed to walk in. So when I pray to the Lord, would you just highlight what you want me to see? That means like pop it out in front of my face. That's what shining is. That's what revealing is, right? And so beauty, when it comes from God, has a way of revealing his light. Think about all the things that you stop for to admire. And I'm going to list out a couple for my week. I was kind of creating a list, a sunset, a song, a flower that was blooming, a child laughing, and even light coming through the window at just the right time, a woman wearing a color that makes her come alive. All of these things come together to reveal his beauty, because we limit ourselves with the word beauty only being appearance. It's so much more. It's who God is in on this earth. And so those are the things that, I had come up this week about just kind of beauty hunting. These are the things that interrupt us, right? They remind us of his goodness and how it is still here in our lives. So Romans 1:20, it tells us that God's invisible qualities are seen through what he has made. Creation is constantly drawing us to him. If we're paying attention, that's the key word. We have to pay attention. And friend, you are part of that creation that is constantly drawing others to him. So what if your beauty was never meant to be a performance or anything that we have known in a negative sense? What if it was meant to be a highlighter? Right? Gently drawing attention to the goodness, creativity, joy, and light that God placed in you as his daughter, so that they can see your creator when they look at you. So that is what we're doing here at Making Life Beautiful again. When we talk about fashion, we're not trying to turn you into someone else and make you follow the trends. We are asking the question, how do we reveal more of who God made you to be, right? When we're talking about health, we're asking, how do we build vitality for the beautiful life you are called to live? And when we talk about skincare and face exercise and all those things, we're not trying to perform beauty in a particular manner that the world is calling us to, but we're learning how to steward it so that we can reveal God's glory, who he has made you to be. And when you begin to see it in that way, that mirror becomes less like a courtroom and a place where you get to be critical about yourself and more like a place of discovery of who God is, right? Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? You can start asking like, Lord, what have you placed here inside of me that I've been too critical, too busy, or too distracted, or too wounded to notice? Because that's the kind of stuff he wants the world to see in you. So what do we do with all this, right? I've said a whole lot of things today. As you can tell, I'm all fired up. This is like my life core message here, you guys. Okay, so it's one thing to say that beauty was created, beauty can be twisted, and beauty was meant to shine, right? It's another to start standing in front of the mirror, even today, and actually believe it and walk in it, right? I want this to be very simple. So the next time you look in the mirror, here's what I want you to do. Before you start fixing or critiquing or scanning for what is wrong or what changed, I want you to stop and pause just for a quick minute. And I want you to go on a treasure hunt with the Lord. I want you to ask him, Lord, what did you put here? Because we usually dial in on the things we don't like, right? So ask him why he put that there. So instead of why do I not look like the way I did in my 30s, like what did you put here and why? Maybe it's the kindness in your eyes or the smile that your grandkids know as home and they can't wait to come and just squeeze you, right? Maybe it's that color that makes you look alive. I want you to know that all of these may sound small. Do not discredit them when you have this conversation with him, because I don't think it's small at all. It's so much of what we do here at Making Life Beautiful. Again, those little changes of putting this one color on that brings you alive changes the whole trajectory of so many things. It's like the domino effect, and all of a sudden the confidence shows up and you start walking in that purpose and calling with complete peace and confidence. So why not go back and just start wearing the color lipstick, right? It's that simple sometimes, but we discredit them because it feels too simple. But some women looking in the mirror without immediately gathering that evidence against themselves would be a complete act of obedience in a healing moment. And so I want you to slow down and enjoy that moment when you have it. And this is where you get to make those tiny agreements with God instead of the agreements with insecurity, and see what he wants to do with it. Sometimes it'll blow your mind. Just show up with curiosity and let him speak. I know if I sit in a room with the Lord, and I could surely do all the talking. And so sometimes I have to put that imagination of duct tape over my mouth and just let him talk. And I do want to be clear, this is not saying that you love everything that you see in the mirror, but it's letting you hear what the Lord has to say first. This is about learning to stop treating your reflection like an enemy, because if God is your creator and you're part of his creation, then the mirror doesn't get the final word. And who's to say it's not a distorted mirror in the first place, right? But your scale doesn't get the final word. Your wrinkle doesn't get the final word. The lighting in the dressing room doesn't get the final word. God gets the final word. And he did not create you so that you could spend the rest of your life apologizing for taking up space, or apologizing for what part of him you got in his traits. Me and my sisters, we all took different traits of my parents. And so I could easily look at each of them and go, ooh, they got the good stuff, I got the bad stuff. No, stop apologizing for the part you got of God, because that's the part the world needs, right? And so he created you to reflect him, to love your neighbor, right? And so I want you to receive yourself in a way that you can receive all of him, and then be able to pour out that place of abundance out of your beauty and what you have to create in this world. And so this is where it gets practical. Okay. I've talked a lot of spiritual things because this is a faith-based place, but here's the practical things. You can wear the color, take the picture. Don't be the person behind the camera. Get into the picture with everyone. Put on those big, fun earrings, right? Care for your skin. Stand up straight. Move your body like you have a life to live. Whatever it is, you don't have to do all of these things. I'm just asking you to do the thing that you feel life on, the thing you feel compelled to do. Let beauty interrupt you during the day. I actually have that written on a note in my camper. Let beauty interrupt you today, because I don't let that happen often enough. And so today I hope that right there, the one liner, that right there, if that zipped up this whole thing, I'd be glad. But notice the flower. My last name's Rose. I like to say, stop and smell the roses. Stop and notice the flower. Notice the light as it's hitting the room at that perfect place. Notice the song, not even just the song, but the lyrics in the song. How does it make you feel? Or what about, I enjoyed this yesterday. What about a child splashing in a water puddle without 1 ounce of worrying about getting his clothes and his shoes muddy? I wanted to stop him so bad, but then I was having so much delight watching him do it. And so that's what beauty is, right? And so beauty has a way of waking up our hearts and moving them more towards God. It's so magnetic. And so maybe that's what we're missing in our lives when we are feeling disappointed about our lives. Maybe we just need to stop and treasure hunt the beauty that God has for us on this earth. So this week, I want you to practice receiving beauty. And I say receiving beauty on purpose, the word receiving it as God's creation, receiving it when someone gives you the compliment, receiving it when you notice something really lovely in the middle of your day, and receiving it when you're looking at your reflection in the mirror. So instead of pushing it away, I want you to say, thank you. Thank you, Lord, for making me me. I do believe there is a children's song that says that. Thank you to the mirror for showing me something that I did not notice in the Lord and who he is, right? Because beauty is not something we're meant to argue with. It's something you're to steward. And if this conversation has made you think a little deeper, or maybe even felt a little uncomfortable, but you know that there's truth on it, I would love it if you would share this episode with a friend who you think might also need to hear it. And maybe you could really be accountability for each other to keep pointing out things on the days we can't see it in ourselves. That's what I truly believe community is all about, is to remind us of who we are in the days we can't remember. And so if you have a friend who laughs off the compliment every time you try to give her one, she's probably the girl. So next week, we're going to be taking this a step further, because once we begin to see the beauty as something that God created or something that he can redeem, we do end up with a practical question after that. And how do we actually live like that? We often are trying to figure out, how do we build a life that reflects beauty in my habits, my health, my home, my family, my schedule, whatever. So next week, we're going to be doing a Q3 reset. And we're going to be looking at that second half of 2026 and talk about simple strategies for living that beautiful life with more intention.